Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you some upgrades or improvements to my mobile ham radio tower. Welcome back and thanks for being here. My name is Scott, and if you've been following my channel or website for any amount of time, then you know I have a pretty kooky setup on the car. Most noticeable lately has been my tower, which contains VHF and UHF beams. I also have a couple of HF antennas, and they used to draw some pretty good attention before the tower went up. And in short, when I'm fully decked out, I can cover everything from 80 meters or 3.5 megahertz all the way up to 450 megahertz or 70 centimeters, with the exception of the 222 megahertz band. I also have a 900 megahertz radio in the car, but I haven't hooked it up yet. I'm still kind of working on that. It hasn't been a high priority, but there we go. And so with the antennas, I can cover horizontal polarization and vertical polarization. I have more antennas on my car than I think most. I ran my original micro tower on and off for about 7 months. It had been to Orlando, Florida for Hamcation and Raleigh, North Carolina for Rars Fest, both for exhibitions. I've roved it through 7 Maidenhead Grid Squares for June's ARRL VHF contest, and I've driven through hundreds of miles of road testing to make sure that it was roadworthy. The setup is effective and roadworthy, but I'm always open to learning ways to improve it or make it safer. Andrea, K2EZ, who's a seasoned contest rover and engineer, she interviewed me for a YouTube video. I'll link that for you. We had a good discussion after the recording, and she recommended some improvements, such as adding triangular supports to the tower legs for better structure and raising the thrust bearing a bit to improve support for the mast. It's hard to disagree with her proposal, especially since Yaesu's own rotator literature calls for, quote, more than 1 meter of mast below the thrust bearing and, quote, less than 1 meter of mast above the thrust bearing. Clearly, I had it backwards, as you can see in this photograph. And, you know, a lot of people have broken that rule without any apparent consequence. But what if I can implement Andrea's ideas and almost comply with Yaesu's installation criteria at the same time? Making my original tower taller and adding triangular supports, it could be done, but it would really require a total rebuild, and that would present costs both in parts and labor. So instead, I decided to look for the shortest section of manufactured tower that might work on my rooftop rack. And much to my surprise, I found a solution. I discovered an inexpensive tower base section by Amorite, I think that's how you say that, and that is the AME25-B3. It's intended to be buried in the ground and encased in concrete, and then you put the other tower sections on top of that. But still, there's hardly any reason why I couldn't use such a piece in my light application, right? All right, maybe there is a good reason, and that would be the warning labels on the tower that say not to cut or weld it or use it anywhere but in the ground. But there's still plenty of leeway, provided I ignore the stickers that warn me not to do exactly what I'm about to do. So, hey, what can I say? Everybody loves a good radio tower on their car, right? Who's with me on that? I chose a BPL25G tower bearing plate by Roan, which is essentially a cap for a 25 series tower, and I placed my DXE TB300 thrust bearing on top of that. Now there's a catch with the parts as delivered. The 40-inch tower base and 16-inch tower top, when bolted together, they assemble into a unit that stands 52 inches tall, which is about 16 inches taller than what I want. Remember, my mast is only 72 inches tall, and that's about 6 feet, and going much taller would result in me exceeding legal road height restrictions or not having enough mast to hold the 4 Yagis that I want. I need at least 39 inches or about 1 meter of mast above the thrust bearing to hold my current setup. And I can squeeze a 4th antenna in there, and it would be tight but functional. And I think I can keep the mast less than 1 meter above the tower, just barely. But I still have less than 1 meter below the tower bearing plate since I want to maintain my overall height. It's not ideal, but it's still much better than where I started. The execution required some cutting and welding, both of which are activities that would make DX Engineering, Amorite, and Roan very happy to support me. All right, maybe not. Anyway, a friend in my local amateur radio club who has a welder and an appreciation for my ham radio mischief did the cutting and welding for me. And he managed to cut the tower pieces to a combined height of 38.5 inches, which is just under a meter, and then he welded them together and added a steel base plate. So mounted to my roof rack with 40.5 inches of mast above the bearing plate, my new road going clearance is 11 feet 8 inches, or if I'm playing it safe, 11.9 as a safety margin, and that's about 3 inches taller than what I had before. The cutting and welding voids the warranty, of course, and leaves the tower really good for nothing other than putting on a car, a truck bed, or perhaps a flat roof at home with low expectations. Maybe I'll do that someday in the future. Another shortcoming with my original micro tower was with its mounting base. I had made it out of decking boards, at first wood and then later composite decking board. And decking boards are intended to be supported every 16 inches, and that's a standard distance between floor joists in the construction industry. My crossbar spacing is 32 inches, so exactly double. And as a result, my wood or decking boards tended to sag in the middle, especially once I tensioned the guy lines. I'll talk about the guy lines here in a minute. My improved micro tower uses 2 lengths of 12 gauge super strut, and each of the 1 5/8 super strut bars can hold 1,400 pounds, and that's at my crossbar spacing, or about 675 pounds when the car is in motion. And then I use a 3rd strut bar to serve as a hinge point. I'll show you that here in just a minute. So I have plenty of support for my rooftop equipment. The combined weight of the super strut, tower, mast, antennas, coax, and other hardware is over 90 pounds. Adding hinges to my platform allows me to tip the tower after removing 6 bolts. I use a pair of bungee cords to slow the tower's descent and to aid with tipping the tower back to the upright position. I remove one section of the tower and antennas at a time while the tower is tipped, loosening 4 nuts on the rotator's mast clamp and 3 bolts on the thrust bearing, as well as clipping some wire ties, allows me to remove the mast and antennas as one piece. So right away that removes 34 pounds. Next, I stand the tower upright to unbolt it from the platform. The 38-pound tower is much easier to remove at that point. After that, I can either remove each of the 6-pound super strut bars or leave them on the car for more kooky ideas. There's no telling what I might pull next. Some have disputed my decision to guy such a small tower on my car, and I guess I can understand the head scratching, but I'll ask this simple question. If you were to put a 6-foot tower with 3 Yankees on the roof of your house, and you knew that it would be subjected to strong gale force winds every day, and that is winds that exceed 47 miles per hour, would you guy that small tower? And I think most would answer yes. Now this is a highway driven vehicle, so that means that it's subjected to gale force winds every time it leaves the house, and even hurricane force winds every time I drive on the interstate. So yes, guying this tower is prudent. Also, the 25 series tower, no matter where you put it, it's not intended to freestand, so it requires guying or bracketing. For now, I've chosen to guy my tower with 3/16 inch ultra cord, and that's a synthetic rope, and that's to avoid detuning adjacent antennas. The platform does not flex, and there does not appear much of a downside to using ultra cord once the advertised 3% stretch has been pulled out with, I've got some turnbuckles in the setup as well. You may also recognize these C-sucker mounts from my previous setup. Each of these can hold 210 pounds. I refinished the tower and the new welds with satin black paint, an appropriate color for an automotive look. Overall, I am pleased to report that the new tower is very stable and has no noticeable flex. I've been sharing some photos throughout the video, and go check out my website to see the whole slew of them. And here is a picture of my wife helping. Some of you don't even think I'm married, but she does exist. I was getting ready to go to the Roanoke Ham Fest and got everything up and was ready to hit the road, and I was marveling at my work, and then I realized, oh no, I forgot to tie wrap my choke and coax to the 6-meter Moxon antenna. And I'm just trying to figure out how am I going to get up there. I wasn't sure if the rack can hold my weight, because I have put on a little bit of weight, and I did not want to take it all back down again, but I had to do something. And right about then, she pulled up the driveway coming home from exercise class, and so I said, hey, I've got a job for you. So she climbed right on up there and zip tied the stuff for me, which was super helpful, a big time saver. And so there we go. There's my my XYL, for those of you who don't think she exists. She is not licensed and has no desire to be licensed, but she is willing to help when she can. So she's definitely a keeper. All right, I think I have spit a lot out there at you. Let me know if you have any questions. There's got to be something I didn't cover in the video. Go check out my previous video as well on it, because that'll give you the elements of how I have arranged the antennas and how I use them. This one is just mostly to show you what I've done to improve the tower itself. As always, I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time. Take care.